Welcome back to HR with Love. I'm Rahana Latif, and today we're talking about what it really means to own your leadership voice in high pressure environments where decisions are fast, stakes are high, and your presence makes all the difference. My guest today is Ash Seddeek. He's an executive coach and author who has worked with leaders at Uber, Cisco, and Oracle. He's created the Own It, Win It, Crush It framework, helping leaders bring clarity, confidence, and impact to how they show up. Ash, thank you so much for being here and joining me today.
Rihanna, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, Ash, you've worked with leaders in high pressure environments. What does it mean to truly own your leadership voice?
It's to have conviction for the most part in a particular vision of the future. And that vision of the future really helps inspire every word you say. And when people hear you talk, they can see that you actually believe in what you're saying. So there is a personal commitment that people can see in your voice and the language that you're using and the future that you're talking about. And that comes across consistently. So, what happens for the audience, they start to actually see that this is something you believe strongly in because you keep bringing it up, whether in one-on-one meetings or in large forums. You are speaking of that same vision and you're very much excited for that vision. And that voice then becomes what other people repeat, the same words. And I think that's the power of leadership. When other people in the company say, Rihanna is talking about it, then it must be important. And then they start to repeat it as well and they carry the message around. So that's what we sometimes, when I'm working with leaders, I coach them on what is an inspiring vision that you believe in that can then become the backdrop for a lot of what you say. Because usually people are looking for what's the bigger why? Yes, we want to increase revenue, or yes, we want to take care of our customers, but what's the bigger why? And the bigger why usually has some broader societal impact story that then can help us in the business that we are talking about.
Your Own It, Win It, Crush It framework is about confidence and results. How can leaders show confidence without crossing into arrogance?
It's a great question, and I've been thinking about it a lot. And we actually see arrogance when the person is so much focused on themselves. They're focused on their own accomplishments, they're focused on maybe their own position, their title, the luxuries that they might have. But if they are a whole lot more focused on the end user, the end customer segment, the employees, the partners, so they are basically focused on somewhere else. They're focused on the broader good, the broader purpose. That's when we see, oh my God, this is determination. This is more about confidence. Arrogance will really come across as a personal story rather than the story of everybody else. So that's when I'm coaching leaders, I basically tell them if you want people to see you as arrogant, you can talk about yourself all day long. But once you shift to us and we and them, oh my goodness, people start to lean in because now they see the story is about them and not just about you. But we definitely want to start with personal stories sometimes. If the purpose is not to be arrogant, but really to find lessons that the audience will find a really smooth bridge over to their own story. So if we can use some vulnerability, that's beautiful. But if you're talking about, the amazing thing you've done when you went up Mount Everest, and you're not shifting and bridging over to how is this useful to others, then of course people will see that as arrogant. And we encourage leaders to be vulnerable and watch out for those moments where the connection between the broader picture is not established. So we basically have to do a lot of preparation and rehearsal to make sure they know how to bridge over. Here's why I was talking about myself. I was talking about myself so we can talk about us.
Well, this brings me beautifully on to the next question. Some say that bold confidence is still rewarded, even when it borders on arrogance. Do you agree with this? And do you think it's changing now?
I think, especially also with generational changes, the leaders are expected to think about how can we communicate the broader impact? 'Cause I think now, especially the young generations are now a lot more into social impact. They're a lot more into what is this going to do to our environment? So I think leaders have to think about how their confidence and conviction can link to a broader issue and a broader purpose without coming across as self-centered or perhaps only thinking about their own issues. So they really need to connect with the audience, and sometimes leaders don't ask questions. And what I encourage them to do is see if you can talk to the audience one-on-one, maybe before your talk, maybe after your talk, so you get a better picture of how it's landing because we can say everything we want, but unless, to your point, unless it connects with that audience, then it's not going to really move farther and help us achieve the inspiration that we're looking for.
In your book, Meaning, you talk about storytelling. How can leaders use this to build trust without sounding arrogant?
I do believe again that unless leaders to look at the journey that they are talking about embarking upon, because most of the time leaders are talking not so much about today's business, but they're talking about tomorrow's business. And that's where storytelling becomes a wonderful tool because it helps people see how are we going to handle this challenge. And we encourage leaders to look for stories that people can relate to, even if it's about them growing up in a small village, them walking to school for miles because they do not have a means of transportation. Finding something genuine like this is a lot more effective, especially if they can say, this is a very similar situation to probably many of you in the audience. So they make a good assumption that, you know what, my story is not necessarily the only story where people had to struggle and work very hard to achieve success. So that way, he basically helps bring that in all of his audience by connecting his story with their story as well. But definitely, I think it's a very thin line between showing that confidence in that future vision with with storytelling and making sure that if you connect with the audience, hopefully you will stay clear of the arrogance impact that might happen.
Yes, we like humility and we like people to lead as a positive role model.
Without a doubt, I think a lot of the time that's the key thing because in order for us to do anything, it's going to be by activating the rest of the organization. I've been talking about this idea of organizational alpha, which is about the idea that sometimes one person coming into the team without shifting anything else, without making any other changes, but somehow that one person coming into the team and they're able to connect with that team, they're able to activate that team. All of a sudden, we see much higher performance from that same team. And we always wonder what happened. So definitely leadership has this organizational alpha impact where they can inspire people, they can show conviction, they can make sure that they have the humility that's needed to let everybody know that I'm there with you. I'm ready to jump right in there with you versus just asking everybody else to work. I think those are some of the elements where leaders can get 15, 20, 30% more by just shifting the way they lead.
Ash, on a final note, do you have any final thoughts or words or advice to our listeners that are watching or listening?
So the final thought I leave with all of us is this framework that I call 3 up, think up, and speak up. And It's about making sure that as leaders, we really make room for our own ability to reflect and think about how we're doing, how others are doing, and then where we want to go. And then come back and think of some ideas that we can use to make things even better. And then, much more importantly, we want you to speak up. We want you to go to different groups and talk to them and hopefully excite them and inspire them. And that's why we think leaders can become chief excitement officers in their organizations because they have the ability to actually activate people that way.
Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Very exciting for me. Thank you so much for having me, Rihanna.
Until next time, let's continue to lead with love and courage. Lots of love from London. Bye for now.